So Dan, it seems like at the higher levels here, CMOs and marketing leaders are under more pressure than ever to demonstrate and quantify the value and the impact that marketing is having internally, and to prove that to the C-suite, to the board, et cetera. What are some ways or best practices on approaching this to address this now rather than later when it becomes even more of an issue?
It's really interesting. Marketing is really unique if you think about the various functions that exist within organizations. Where marketing, I think, is a bit unique in that there is a sense of entitlement for all in an organization to believe they have a legitimate ability and right to actually provide ongoing commentary about the performance, about the approach to marketing. It's a more ubiquitous thing. And I found that to be more prevalent for marketing than for other areas, say engineering, R&D, where people are coming in saying, you know what, I'm going to take an engineering perspective and critique what if you go and talk to any marketing leader, they'll tell you, no, 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 we get a abundance of helpful advice and commentary, be it from sales, be it from finance, be it from operations, because it's just this more ubiquitous thing. I think people connect and relate to that. And so in that environment where you have this really large population of people that aren't necessarily trained as marketers per se, and I guess you could say know enough to be dangerous in that sense, but also feel very enthusiastic about wanting to offer their opinion. This is a real opportunity for education and really some level setting by marketing leaders to really help frame exactly what their team and what their focus is all about and how they're contributing to organization success. And so something that's worked for me, and I've seen this across several teams in fast growing organizations, is to first take a very proactive approach to really an internal marketing campaign, a marketing of your marketing strategy. And how do you do that? Well, it's really pretty basic in one sense, which is any functional team typically is having regular team meetings. And so by reaching out to your peers, you may be a director level, senior manager level even. It doesn't have to be just at the VP level or up, but it can as well. Really reach out and ask to see if you can come in as a representative or bring some of your managers in as well to basically have a quick conversation or update, flash update for that other functional team about what's going on in marketing. And this isn't necessarily just focused on a task level. Let me tell you about some of the specific initiatives we're working on. It's a great opportunity to really say, how are we measuring ourselves? How are we holding ourselves accountable to contributing in a meaningful way to accomplishing the company's objectives? So this is your chance to show that you as a team have established those measurable priority KPIs that you track, measure, that you're applying ongoing learning to improve your performance, just as teams like sales have, since time began, have been measuring themselves on a very measurable quota. How are we doing in terms of revenue? What you're communicating at that point is that we as marketers are not exclusive from that. We are also going to set measurable goals and targets. We hold ourselves accountable to learn and to achieve or to beat those targets. And it's amazing, Tim, what I've seen when you do that and you show you have those quantifiable measures, the credibility gain that you get, especially in teams like sales or finance that are more quantitative driven. It goes through the roof. You've increased your credibility because they see now that you're holding yourself accountable to those measurable goals.
Wow, Dan, this is incredible because this is, I think, the holy grail for marketing leaders. And I hope, I want to go back and listen to what you just said because this is so important that oftentimes I'm hearing from leaders that they don't have the trust or the respect or the support from executive leadership or cross-functionally. And what you just said, I think, is such a simple way to approach it, but so powerful that if we can, one, have metrics to hold ourselves accountable, but then two, find ways to weasel ourselves into whatever meetings we can or opportunities we can get to present this, to share this, to demonstrate. I think that's so important and so effective. There's a lot of stuff that marketing does that's invisible work and we need to make the invisible visible. And I think what you're describing is such a great way to do that, to show up, pop in, and say, here's what we're doing at a high level or even a specific thing, and to demonstrate and show how it's quantifiable and being measured. That is incredible. And I think even doing that one time would have a huge impact from what you're saying. But I can only imagine doing that every quarter, and the impact and the trust that would create over time as well. That it wasn't just a flash in the pan, that this one time we happened to have all our ducks in a row and show up correctly. But we can do it consistently. And I think over time, that consistency also shows that we can earn the trust and respect of the team. I think this is amazing. I think there's two challenges here. One is having the quantifiable metrics. A lot of marketing leaders are still struggling with that. The second, though, is finding those opportunities and having the chutzpah, the confidence to go out and put yourself out there and say, can I do this? Could you speak to that second part? How can we look for those opportunities, and how can we be bold and brave to reach out and say, you know what? I think it's important that we show you what we're doing and the impact we're having.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to personal initiative. What I found is by taking the first step, and in some organizations, and this would be a wonderful thing if another functional leader was proactive and reached out to you as a marketing leader and said, "Hey, I'd like you to come in to my team meeting to be able to do that." But so often that doesn't happen organically. I mean, and so you taking the initiative, just simply reaching out and say, "Hey, give me 15, 20 minutes." And I found 99% of the time, people are sometimes they're kind of surprised and amazed. "Oh, really? You'd be willing to come in and you want to do that?" And they react very favorably to it. The other thing is beyond just coming into the team meeting, there's an opportunity to really back to transparency, which we've talked a lot about. If you're in a in-office setting, maybe you're working hybrid, so people are in a couple of days a week, in your work space area, finding a place where you can actually put your metrics up on the board, on a wall, or some sort of graphic that actually is showing progress towards that goal. Simple. We've seen that obviously traditionally when we were all working in an office, but even now you can do that physically. But even if you're working in a remote environment, there's a way to digitally do that. If you've got a team page, a lot of organizations, you're going to have a functional team page, be able to communicate it there so people in the organization can go and kind of see what's happening in terms of progress towards that goal. The other thing, Tim, that is really powerful in really the marketing of the marketing is being very transparent about team structure, roles, and responsibilities. I can't tell you how often there is tangled confusion, not only sometimes within a marketing team, if it's a bigger team, but even other functions where they don't even fully understand what all of the pieces are doing and kind of how they work together, and the synergy that's created there in terms of achieving those results. And so there's a huge opportunity as a leader to have documented kind of a structural map that really explains each of the core teams within your marketing organization, what their purpose is, right? Maybe some of the specific areas that they're measuring themselves. So that could be a deeper level than just your priority overall team KPIs, but each of those sub teams probably has some things that are most meaningful to them. If it's product marketing, or it could be even an internal creative team, or it could be your field marketing or demand generation teams. Each of those has a specific set of activities that are generating some sort of measurable results. And so having some sort of visual map that just describes those ingredients, it's like coming to the organization and saying, "Here's a delicious meal that is very satisfying, but I'm going to actually give you a sense of what the ingredients are behind that delicious meal." And kind of then the light bulb goes off to say, "Okay, I see how those all work in harmony to come together to do that." And it also facilitates more engagement with your team, because now people have a sense of, "Oh, okay, so those are the people, and that's the team that I should go to if I have questions about this aspect of marketing's doing." It seems really simple, but so often, Tim, we don't have that clarity established, and it really creates a lot of frustration and confusion in an organization.
Dan, you and I both know it's almost never the case that they have this kind of organization and structure and documentation. I love this idea. And I could even see, I'm curious your perspective here. is this something that we could have the teams build themselves, that, the managers of these teams could start to put that together and shape it? I also imagine that over time, there's a culling that happens there too, that, demand gen responsibilities may shift or the goals may shift. And so maybe we're no longer taking on these activities, but we're doing these activities instead. And, again, maybe the social team is the same. We're no longer on Twitter or X or whatever it's going to be called now, but,
Right.
we're doing different things as well. So could you speak to that a little bit about could the teams help and build the initial structure here themselves, kind of a self-assimilation, and then also how does that change over time, or should it change over time?
I think by definition, things are going to evolve and they're going to change. Nothing is ever static indefinitely. So by definition is going in knowing that over time, some of that the structure roles, the definitions are going to change. But absolutely, this needs to be team generated, right? This isn't something that is pre-defined or just you don't grab just a cookie cutter definition, because inside of each organization, depending on the number, the size of the team, sometimes multiple hat, flexibility, very dynamic. Others are more larger teams may have the ability to specialize more. So it's never going to be a look exactly the same. So you want to build something that is very relevant and specific to your situation, your budget, size of team, what your priorities are in terms of how you're supporting the organization and marketing. Are you taking a more of a product led approach? Are you doing it in terms of customer segment? Or that can vary and that can shift in terms of what that looks like. But at the end of the day, creating something that is visual and accessible to others in the organization, that is self-generated, and then also being available and knowing there are going to be questions and there's going to be engagement opportunities. So it's really important. The exercise isn't done by just saying, oh, we've published it, go out to the site and just take a look at it and use that, but encourage more conversation that allows you to reinforce those specific strategic priorities and really connect the dots in terms of how marketing is an essential ingredient to supporting company success. So that's the marketing of the marketing.
This is beautiful, Dan. I'm curious if we're talking about equipping and empowering marketing leaders to get the visibility and the trust and the credibility that they need to be successful in their roles. If you could tell them three things that are most important that they should be doing on a regular basis or focused on, perhaps this is one of them, but what would be the top three things that as a marketing leader someone needs to focus on internally to help build a case, build support, and create that trust and recognition?
Yeah. So the top three would begin with be proactive in creating conversation opportunities with those cross-functional teams. And that can happen again in terms of one-on-one with your peer leader of other functional teams. It can happen by you engaging in their team meetings. It can happen in terms of broader, larger organizational meetings where you're actually sharing the message in terms of your priorities, strategic focus, and contributions to company success and progress towards your established metrics. So multiple layers of communication opportunities, but it's a mindset that says proactive creation of each of those conversation events. So that's area one. The second is to really drive for inclusive team involvement in creating both a vision for your team, like at the end of the day, what are we all about? What do we really stand for? And so almost having that brand unto your own marketing team and the character and the philosophy behind how you're going to operate and work together as a team, document that along with, things you typically document, which is your overall plan. What are those activities, responsibilities, and actively engage the team, check in with the team on a regular basis in terms of how are we doing in terms of those priorities? How are we achieving our goals? Where are we falling short? what's the learning that we're getting from execution that we should be applying going forward to get better. So it's more of a clarity around purpose with ongoing engagement and assessment to be able to then continuously learn and apply that. And I think the third thing is one that people really struggle with. Leaders, regardless of function, struggle with, and marketing is certainly part of this, which is show humility and be okay with some vulnerability around that we're not going to be perfect, that we are going to make mistakes. We're never going to always exceed and hit performance levels on every single campaign, every single tactic. Sometimes it's the learning from that first execution where we fall short that will be the real catalyst for even greater success down the road. So I think it's that vulnerability and the accountability to own that which falls short, but then what are we going to take from that experience to ensure better performance or greater success down the road? So those would be the top three.
Amazing. I love the humility aspect, especially because you mentioned earlier the comparison, or I should say the contrast between engineering and marketing as an example, and how, no one expects engineering to tell them how to do their job or that they should have the product built or figured out, now rather than in the future. And I feel like that's a big disconnect for marketing that we often, at least in my experience working with marketing leaders, they struggle with this a lot, this idea of humility and vulnerability that you discussed, because it feels like we should know all the answers and we should be able to deliver immediately. And both of those are obviously not true. And I believe nobody knows what works in marketing for a lot of reasons. This is new to everybody. We're all learning and figuring out as we go. And, your product, your service, your market, your customers are different than everything else. And so we don't have the answers. And it is all one big experiment, one big guess that we can hopefully figure it out. And I feel like that should hopefully take some weight off our shoulders as you're describing, to be humble, to have humility, and to be vulnerable and say, yeah, we don't know. We're doing the best we can, and we're going to figure it out along the way.
It's definitely a big exhale moment for sure to take that weight off your shoulders, be vulnerable, and be human.